Mhm. So as I was saying, like, so the first week was like pretty fast. I mean, I spent the whole week with my mother, going to some like cooking classes. So it was basically kind of like a 9 to 5, like there. Um, I like cooking now. It's actually very pleasant to focus on the chopping and the cutting. So I thought that was a pretty good practice there as well, because you got to be careful. Else you're gonna like cut your
Hmm.
fingers off when you try to cut an onion. Um, so there was so I it was a pretty fun practice to stay in the moment. I also got some glimpses at how impatience worked. So those are also extra points to pay attention, particularly when I would have questions, or my mother would also ask me questions, because like when you're already busy and somebody's like, oh, how do you do this that. So that was a really nice thing to look out for and practice. This week was also kind of.
What? Let
Mhm,
me ask you a question. Very
mhm,
quick question. What you're saying is that
mhm,
when you're doing an activity such as
mhm,
chopping food, or before when you were doing code,
mhm,
and then mom comes in,
mhm.
that you start paying attention to her
Yes.
rather than paying attention to what you were doing.
In fact, this scenario actually just happened 3 days ago. I think I was in here writing code, and my father comes. It's the exact situation as 2 weeks ago, and he comes in and says, "Yo, look at this. Like, give me like 2 minutes." So the first time I go out and I do it, and then I come back in and write code, and then around like 10 minutes later, my brother also calls me out to take a look at his, like retirement stuff. So I go out. So I was like, all right, that's fine. So I sit back in. Then my father comes in and says, "Can you give me another 2 minutes?" Now at that point, I was like, okay, just wait a little bit. But when I said that, I was like, I think I'm making a mistake here. So I just
Uh-huh.
continued on for like a minute. And as soon as I finished it, I was like, all right, no, I got to get out there. And he was already like kind of like fuming. He was like, is my stuff more important, or is yours? And I was like, yeah, totally yours. That's why I just like came out here as fast as I could. And I was like, oh my god, crisis like kind of averted, like. And so I was like, oof, next time, like even the second time, I have to like get out there like ASAP. So that was a relief. I think
Wow, he is really doing his job of being the Zen master.
yeah. I was like, I'm pretty sure like if I had like just stalled for like a couple more minutes, I think we would have had like a situation again. So I was like, ooh, I was like, okay, lucky that I kind of walked out there pretty quick. So I was like, maybe like I'll do even better next time. um, then this week, um, I went back to work on Wednesday. There wasn't really much except, so I think there's like a sense of freedom, because I'm going to be switching teams very soon. I guess that's also, it's kind of interesting. It's not that I like my current team, but switching teams, it you're not as like pressure, so it actually things go kind of smoother. You're more relaxed when you approach like lots of things, because like, all right, I'm gonna switch anyway. So it's like I'm actually kind of surprised, less mental like friction, I guess. And in terms of the generosity practice, um, so the highlight, I guess, of this week was actually last week was the New Year's weekend. I was walking and I saw a mother and her daughter sitting on the street, just sitting there. And the daughter was like, I guess, like just was hungry, so she was sitting there, and I was like, I should probably give them something. And the only dollar bill I had was a 20, so I just gave it to them. And I said like Happy New Year, and she was like, "Oh, thank you. I can finally get some food to eat." I was like, "Oh, that's great. Like Happy Holidays." And I just like walked on. And I think that was the highlight of the generosity practice. I didn't see the lady with the like who said like she got out of the abused relationship last New Year's week, because I didn't go to class New Year's week, and this time, like today, it was raining, so she didn't like set up when I like walked past like my usual route, so I didn't see her
Hmm.
this week. But other than that, the only other thing worth mentioning is, so I kind of like let the formal practice kind of slide during Christmas week, like 3 days, but now I'm putting it back on track. So 45-minute like increments. I'm trying to get it back to like an hour. But other than
Hmm.
that, everything else is kind of going smoothly. Sometimes during the formal practice, there's like a little bit of dullness because I get tired during work, but I just like either stand up or I take a deep breath and try to do it all over again. So I mean,
Yes.
that's basically like the 2 weeks in a nutshell. Yeah.
That's a very good report. I'm glad that, especially with your dad, with your mom and dad. That's really good, and I think that you can reflect back
Hmm.
that this new way of incorporating them into your practice, the way that you have, um, actually makes things at home much better.
Mm, I think so. Yes.
But that one of the things that you will get, and in fact I could have foreseen this, but now I'm seeing it
Mm-hmm.
directly, is that as you pay more attention to and pay respect more and more to your dad,
Mm-hmm.
the more he'll begin to expect that from you. So you're
Oh.
going to have to keep doing it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or he'll revert to finding a way of zapping you with his Zen stick.
Yeah. And also it's interesting to see like what my mother can teach me. So I mean, what happened was so my phone is like kind of getting wonky. Like sometimes when people message me, I don't get like the alerts anymore. So I got like a new phone, but I haven't actually bothered to open it and actually upgrade my like migrate my stuff over. And my
Hmm.
mom has been hounding me on this, and I keep saying, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it." And I postponed it for a month now. It's
Who
been
has been hounding you?
my mom, and she was like, "Yo, you gotta switch your phone." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." And so this is something I think I have to get better on still, right? Because we said like if you say you're gonna do it, you gotta do it. But I've been putting off like switching over to the new phone for like a month now, so I'm gonna do it tonight.
Okay.
I can get like like stuff like that. Like I was just like it still kind of works. It's not really broken, so I keep putting it off. But I really have to do it. Yeah.
Um, One of the things that I've been thinking about, because I've got a couple of new students in,
Mm,
and if you don't mind, I would like to do a bit of a review
mm,
with you.
mm.
Um, Hang on a second. I'll be right back. One,
Hmm.
one second.
Sure. Yep. Hmm. Hmm.
All right.
Hmm.
Before I do the review, I'll give you a weather report.
Hmm. Gotcha.
We have had heavy weather.
Heavy weather.
Heavy weather.
Hmm.
Um, Let us say that the storm that has just passed over
Hmm.
was as big as, and in fact encompassed the entire Gulf of Thailand,
Really?
from Vietnam all the way down to Malaysia.
Hmm.
I've got a satellite image of it.
Wow. Hmm.
The uh, the water had come all the way up to cover all of the beaches on the west side of the island,
Hmm.
and then the storm surge above that was 8 meters.
Oh.
And I have a photograph that you can see that the guy who's taking this photograph should put down his or take his camera with him and run.
It's like it's like the tornado like people, right? Like on YouTube, they drive like really close and they're like, "Whoa, look at the wind!" And then they're like, get in the car," you know?
In this particular place, there were no cars to get into. This was strictly a running situation.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
I'll send you the photo on
Okay.
YouTube later.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, we have had very, very heavy wind.
Mm,
One of the examples of it is you know that on coconut palms that
mhm,
the leaves are very, very large,
mm,
probably 4 meters sometimes long, and
mhm,
very heavy and broad. We have um, those kind of leaves
mhm,
sitting next to the house on a side that the closest tree
mhm.
is like 50 meters away.
50 meters away.
And so those limbs got blown to the house or against the house
Oh,
from about 50 meters. It's
that's
really, really strong wind.
that's
And so
scary.
I've had to retreat. So
Mhm.
it's also been very cold.
Oh,
But in the past 15 minutes or so, the sun has come out. Everything is starting to dry up. It just happened.
wow.
And that's why I took the shirt off, is it suddenly got warm.
It suddenly got warm. I mean, here it's just been like so rainy today. I'm actually surprised because for Christmas we didn't actually get a white Christmas. There wasn't really like a lot of snow. In fact, there was no snow like the last like week like during Christmas. So I think it just kind of snowed once, like near the end of December. Sorry, end of November, and then that was it. So I was
Hmm.
like, so some of my friends were like, "Oh, it doesn't feel like Christmas," and I was like, "Oh, good point. It didn't snow." Yeah.
It doesn't feel like Christmas here at all.
Do you guys like have like Christmas decorations and everything? And like, does anybody like actually celebrate like this in Thailand?
Um, there are two instances that have come in.
Hmm.
One is the big retail box stores
Oh,
like Tesco
oh,
will give a nod towards Christmas, and one of the nods they give is all of the clerks will wear an elf hat or a Santa hat.
oh.
The other is the Westerners who are coming who celebrate Christmas because of their own culture and background. And
Oh.
I would have to add a third one is media. That
Oh, like,
because of media, because of YouTube and
mm,
whatnot like that.
mm-hmm,
So this year, Kitty was 6 years old in December,
mm,
and so she wanted to have Christmas, and so we got her a tree that's about this big,
yeah,
and
nice.
she celebrated decorated a Christmas tree. But
That's really
the fact is that at the age of 6,
mm.
she knows nothing about Christmas.
Oh.
She doesn't even know about Santa Claus.
Oh, really?
None of the kids know anything about Santa Claus. The only thing that the kids here in Thailand know about Christmas is a few decorations that manage to wind up in the box stores. And so she doesn't know about she doesn't know about December the 25th and its relationship to December the 21st and the
Uh-huh,
solstice and the old pagan religions that have
uh-huh.
always had a holiday on that. Because, see, here in the tropics,
Right.
we don't even notice
Uh-huh.
that. In fact, I did note
Mm.
that the sun was going down about 5:45 in
Oh,
the
that's
afternoon.
the only sign like of the.
Right, and at the best, it will be closer to about 7 o'clock.
Mm,
Now,
mm,
the reason that we have that is that if I were using absolute local time,
mm,
then it would be between 5 and or let us say 5:30 and 6:30. That's
mhm,
about the range of it. But because we're in a time zone,
mhm,
the time zone is not exactly
mhm,
uh, local time.
mhm,
All right.
mhm,
So, but that's all we have is the
mm,
fact that the sun is coming and going like that, as opposed to New York, where
mm.
you have hours that you can tell. between and the whole idea is that in mid-December the people are losing the sun,
Yeah.
and by the 25th they can tell, oh no, it's coming back now. It's definitely coming back.
I'm just gonna enjoy the extra hour of sleep while I still can, before they take it away from me again, like in summer. So, you know.
Well, you're thinking about let us say um, the culture of the now, and the whole idea of time zones and daylight saving times and all of that kind of stuff. And what I'm looking at is the history of
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, or the history of that time of year.
Oh, okay, right.
It's in the sense of that Christmas was stolen by the Christians. There's no
Mhm.
indication at all that Jesus' birthday was on December the 25th.
Oh yeah, they probably yeah.
In,
Somebody just
in fact, because of research, there are some researchers that tend to peg his birth time in September, but I have no clue of why.
oh wow. Yeah, I
But
mean,
we do know about Mithra.
oh, who's that?
Mithra was the religion of the Roman army,
Oh, oh.
and that they've done a lot of digging. One of the places that they've dug up is actually there is a Roman temple to Mithra in England,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which shows that that's where they got the idea that it must be the Roman army's religion, and so they've done more excavation to find out that was in fact the case.
Mm-hmm.
But the things that are interesting about Mithra
Mm.
is that he was born on December the 25th to a virgin, and he died and was resurrected from the dead.
I mean, oh, that's totally not Jesus, you know. Totally not
And so,
Jesus.
well, what we can see is that when Constantine put the assembly together at Nicaea,
Mm.
that time was that he was trying to consolidate his power. And
Mm.
so he would take various things from various religions in order to incorporate those people. But the real thing that Constantine was trying to do was weaken the authority of the Vestal group
Oh, okay.
in Rome
Mm-hmm.
that had Venus and Mars and a lot of astrology, and those priests were very, very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so he used Christianity to weaken the religious elite of
Oh,
Rome.
is that why he declared like Christianity like the state religion? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he had to manufacture the religion, and he used the various component parts of all of the religions around him,
Oh, gotcha.
including Mithra. Uh huh. All right. And there's also a good idea that it looks like that Tiberius,
Mm-hmm.
who was in power at the time that Jesus was supposed to have lived.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like that what they were doing at that time was trying to set the son of Tiberius up as to be the son of God. It was all about politics.
Mm-hmm.
Roman politics was where the early part of Christianity came from,
Mm-hmm.
because Tiberius' son, I forget what his name was actually the chancellor or the governor of Judea, whatever kind of stuff like that. Very strong political power. We're not talking about Herod, we're talking about after Herod,
Oh.
especially around time of 70 AD,
Mm.
when the Christians were absolutely, along with all the other Jews, wiped out.
Oh. Oh.
But anyway, never mind about that. What I'm getting around to saying was the very simple thing is that Kitty and the 6-year-old kids in
Ah.
Thailand know nothing about Christmas. They don't know any of this history. They don't know even about the Pineapple Express, which is a movie story about kids getting on a train and going all the way to the North Pole and meeting um, Santa Claus and all of that. They don't know about Elf or any of the folklore.
Uh-huh.
And and You know that I have been kind of collecting movies over a long period of time.
Right, right.
Well, I've got about 300 Christmas movies.
Oh my God.
And Kitty hasn't seen any of
Any
them.
one of them?
Not even one of them. We tend to stay with Disney. And I'm also reading her books now.
Oh,
And
really?
so it will be later in her life when I introduce her to
Yes.
Christianity and to Christmas.
Because that's gotcha.
In those ways, she's very Thai.
Mm, mm. I
Because
think
in Thailand, there is no celebration of Christmas.
no
It's
help.
not a holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody takes any time off. The banks are open. All the
Oh my
shops are
God.
open. The school is open. The government is open.
Oh,
Nobody takes a holiday.
oh. I'm just happy that like for us like everybody slows down at the end of the year. I think it's a good thing. That like
Well, in Thailand, in fact, New Year's,
hmm.
the Western New Year's is a holiday.
Oh, okay.
And there's another thing, and that is that the king that just died last year,
Boomy ball. Mm-hmm.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
his birthday was on December the 5th, and
Oh.
so all of December, Bangkok would be lit up with lights, and the
Oh.
Westerners would come and think this is Christmas celebration, and in fact, it
And
was
it's
a
not.
celebration for the king.
Oh.
But like I said, they do celebrate New Year's. But
Mm.
in Thailand, they have three New Years.
3 New Years.
3 New Years, yes. They have the New Year for the Western New Year, December the 31st, January the 1st.
Mm.
Then they have the old traditional Thai New Year, which is called Songkran, which is the water festival.
Oh, when is
That's in
that?
April.
April.
And to top it all off,
The Lunar New Year.
the biggest one
Mm-hmm.
is the Chinese New
Chinese
Year
New
in
Year.
February, and there's enough Chinese culture here in Thailand that that's a big deal. In fact, the Chinese New Year is much more clear and much more obvious than
Oh,
Christmas.
really? Wow. Yeah, I'm excited for that too because I mean, it used to be more fun when I was a kid. Now everybody else is, the people in our family, they're getting old, so they don't party as hard. It's just like, you say your Chinese things, and then everybody just gathers for dinner. I was like, all right, I'll take it. Chinese New Year, I'll take a day off.
Okay, so the review that I wanted to give you
Mm,
has to do with the combination of three suttas,
okay.
and that if the suttas are read separately,
Mm-hmm.
taken separately,
Mm-hmm.
um, then, and this is how it's normally done,
Mm,
that even understanding one sutta sometimes is kind of hard.
mm-hmm.
But being able to put suttas together to get a more deep and clear understanding
Mm-hmm.
of what the Buddha actually taught
Mm-hmm.
is the best way to go.
Mm,
A clear example of that here in just with the stuff that we're doing,
mm-hmm.
if a student who is only doing reading or watching the YouTubes, the
Mm,
best way for them to do that is by taking one of the students and following along with what I'm doing with one student,
mm,
as opposed to just mixing it all up. And the
right.
sutras are just kind of mixed up all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And so the three sutras that seem to work together to
Mm,
give a really clear understanding of what the path
mm-hmm.
is Sutta number 2, the Sabha Asava Sutta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me write that down. Hold on. I'll get a piece of paper. Sutta number 2. Okay.
Okay. And the second one is Sutta number 24 called the Chariot Relay.
Okay. The chariot.
And that the Chariot Relay has the quality of two old monks.
Mm.
One of them very famous and well known, Sariputta, and the other one is a master teacher from another area.
Mm.
Okay, and that guy knew Sariputta, but Sariputta didn't know him. But Sariputta questioned him, and the questions that he asked him 7 questions, and the answer to each one of them is no.
Oh. No. Okay.
All right. The answer to every one of these 7 questions is no. And then later in the sutta, um, this monk puts it together like that it's like a chariot relay, that the king comes out of his palace
Mm-hmm.
and is going to a city in a far place,
Mm-hmm.
that he takes his chariots and his horses, and he rides to the first stop, changes horses,
Mm-hmm.
and then continues on
Mm-hmm.
until he's made 7.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask the question, does the king get from Saranath to Rajgiri
Mm-hmm.
by chariot from the first stop? And the answer is no. He cannot just stop at the first stop.
Mm-hmm.
And the entire journey is not from the first stop to the second stop. That's not the journey. That the
Mm-hmm.
whole journey is all 7 steps.
Mm.
And so, and the question is the holy life lived for the purification of virtue? Is the first question, and
Mm.
the answer is no.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second question is the holy life practiced
Mm-hmm.
for the sake of purification of mind?
Mm.
And the answer is no.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And the third question is the holy life lived for the purification of view?
Mm.
And the answer is no here. But now we're setting up a sequence.
Ah.
Okay, these questions are being asked by Sariputta himself, so you know that he's asking these questions in a particular order for a particular reason.
Oh. Okay.
All right, and so after you have purification of view,
Mm.
then the next one is purification of doubt.
Now. Mm-hmm.
Now, at this particular point, what I want to point out to you is that the the language translation that gives us the word purity
Mm-hmm.
is not a good
Mm.
way of looking at it. Much better way of looking at it is cleaning,
Cleaning. Oh. Okay.
cleaning,
Mm-hmm.
cleaning your virtue,
Mm-hmm.
cleaning your mind,
Mm-hmm.
cleaning your view,
Mm-hmm.
cleaning out the doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next one after for purification or the cleaning of doubt is the cleaning of the knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we have virtue.
Mm.
Next we have purification of mind.
Mm.
Next we have purification of view.
Mm.
Next we have purification of doubt.
Mm.
And the next one is purification by knowledge and vision of what is and what is not the path.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now that we've gotten 5 out of the 7, and I want to stop here
Mm-hmm.
because we want to start putting things together.
Mm.
This sutta of and by itself has some indicators of what needs to be done. In other words, the steps of the path.
Mm.
And you can also see why the Eightfold Noble Path for the beginner
Mm.
is almost always referred to as Sila, Samadhi,
Mm-hmm.
Panya.
Mm.
Okay? Because you can see that right away. The first step is the cleansing of virtue is the Sila. The
Mm.
second one is the cleaning out of the mind, which is Samadhi.
Mm.
The next one is the purification of view, which is now Panya.
Mm.
So that idea of Sila Samadhi Panya is in fact the beginner's way,
Mm.
the way for the beginner.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you look at Sutta number 117
Mm-hmm.
that talks about the Eightfold Noble Path, the
Mm-hmm.
Buddha definitely, strongly, and without a doubt says right view comes first, not
Oh.
Sila.
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha.
in this regard, the noble path is not Sila Samadhi Panya,
Mm-hmm.
rather it is Panya Sila
Mm.
Samadhi.
Oh, okay.
And I'll talk about how that fits together in just a moment.
Mm.
But the next thing I want to do is now introduce my main teaching tool nowadays is Sutta number 48.
48. Okay.
The Sutta number 48 is the kasavis.
Mm.
And in here he has 7 steps,
Mm-hmm.
but these 7 steps are most specifically and most exactly talking about 7 knowledges.
Mm.
All right. Forgive me for that interruption.
Oh, no, no, that's fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the 7 knowledges.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at what we mean by the word knowledge, because knowledge is actually a key word,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we look at the Anapanasati Sutta
Mm-hmm.
and the Great 40, which is both 117 and 118.
Mm-hmm.
They both end in phrases that are talking about knowledge
Mm-hmm.
and deliverance
Mm.
in the sequence of knowledge and deliverance. So,
Mm.
knowledge comes first.
Mm.
Knowledge is also the eradication of ignorance.
Mm.
All right, so what is the first knowledge?
Mm.
The first knowledge is that and you've heard me say this many times, no matter how obstructed the mind is,
Mm-hmm.
I can clean it out
Mm.
and come to the reality of the moment.
Right.
All right. No matter how obstructed the mind is, I can clean it out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let's look at this as in relationship to 2 words that I use together. And those 2 words are seclusion
Mm.
and virtue or
Mm.
morality.
Mm.
That if a student is sitting on his cushion
Mm-hmm.
and he's got his hands closed, he's got his eyes closed, he's sitting in the cross-legged posture,
Mm.
he has, in fact, by doing that, by isolating himself, by closing his eyes and not listening and being in a private room or perhaps at the foot of the tree in a forest, he
Mm.
is nowhere around anything that could be considered society.
Mm.
There is no other people, etc., like that. So in that regard, his sila is perfect.
Oh, okay.
His sila is actually perfect, or let us say pure.
Mm.
Or a better way that I like to say it is that it's at least clean now.
Ah, gotcha.
Except that there's one more possibility, and that is what if he's sitting there and doing all of that work the way that we're talking about, and instead of watching his breath, he's actually planning a murder?
Oh, that's
Well, if
it's
he's actually planning a murder, then you wouldn't call that good sila, now would you? That's not a high level of morality.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So, what we need to look at this morality is also that
Mm-hmm.
quality of being able to rid the mind of hindrances. And so now we're looking at a deeper level of seclusion. Not only is he sitting in his sitting posture, secluded from the outside world, he's
Mm.
also secluded his mind from the outside world. He is not planning murders, he's not thinking about people, and he's not manufacturing anger or fear in his own mind out of his past, thinking
Mm.
about the world.
Mm.
So, this is where that first step comes in, is not real sila in the sense of purification of virtue, but it's rather a purification of virtue in the mind.
Mm. Okay.
All right. Now, where this comes relevant is that there are groups of people who are Buddhist practitioners. I'm talking about monks. I'm talking about fully ordained people,
Mm.
and that they follow this process in the sense that the monk's behavior has to become perfect
Perfect.
before he can do any of the next steps. He has to get perfect sila all the time.
Mm.
All right, this is something that is not what the Buddha teaches at all. What he's talking about is no matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clean it out.
Mm-hmm.
Indicates that we're going around with an obstructed mind that needs to be cleaned out quite a lot of the time. That's that first step.
Uh-huh.
All right, and so it's not a really huge step, a great big sila that
Mm-hmm.
has maybe taking 3, 4, 5 years, and then the monk practices samadhi for 3, 4, 5 years, and then he finally gets his mind cleaned out. Oh no, we want to start cleaning that mind out right away. In fact, that they're part and parcel. Now, the
Uh-huh.
first knowledge is no matter how much the mind is obstructed, the mind
Mm-hmm.
can be cleaned out. In other words,
Mm.
I can seclude myself from the past. I can seclude myself from the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to add a little thing just for you right now, now that I've talked about this, is
Mm-hmm.
that one of the things that I want you to start watching for is
Mm-hmm.
whenever your mind is in the past,
Mm.
so that you can start coming out of the past.
Right.
And there are many, many ways to do that. An example would be how many different cities have you lived in?
Oh, just this one.
Just that one. Have you lived in another house other than this one?
Um, there was like an old apartment when we used to live. Yeah, we lived in like this is like our second one. Yeah,
All
we lived
right.
in like an old apartment. Yeah.
Then this is a clear example. I give you the task that it's your job now to never allow your mind to think about that old house that you lived in
Mm. Mm-hmm.
or anything that happened in that old house. It's in
Mm.
the past, it's gone.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Okay. So you can think of that old house and everything about it would
Mm-hmm.
be an elephant in the room.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I asked you a question like that was is if you've lived in another city,
Mm-hmm.
then that city would also be part of the past, not worthy of reflection.
Mm. Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And since I've lived in many different places, I've got a long, long list of elephants.
Oh.
Okay, so you start taking things as an example and say, okay, I'm throwing that one out. I'm not going to have that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Another example, have you ever had another job other than the one that you have now?
No, this is the first one. Yeah.
Okay. But before that, you were in university, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. So now, university, any thoughts about university are out?
Or out.
They're,
Okay, write that
yeah,
down.
right.
Okay.
They're what I call thoughta non grata.
Uh-huh. Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thoughta non grata means that we're going just to throw that stuff out. We're not going to deal with the past.
Mm.
Why? Because the past and the future are actually a form of suffering,
Mm.
and it's a form of ignorance because the past does not exist right now.
Correct. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that house that you used to live in, the house itself may still be there, but
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing like it was when you were there. It's probably had a paint job, it's got
Mm.
different furniture, it's got different people, got different
Right.
vibes, it might have
Uh-huh.
dog hair. You
Uh-huh.
don't know what it is, but one thing for sure, it's
Uh-huh.
not the same as you remember.
Right. Okay.
And you didn't remember it very well anyway.
Yeah, it's been like 10 years.
Okay.
More than that.
And
Yeah.
so as you progress along the path, you'll figure out new things that happened in the past that when you think of them,
Mm-hmm.
they're not useful to you to think about that. And so you'll start saying, out that goes. I don't want to think about that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
only going to think about what's happening now.
Gotcha.
Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
so that fits in exactly with Sutta number 2, which I'll introduce in stages,
Mm-hmm.
because the Buddha talks about it in the sense that um,
Mm-hmm.
that people will pay attention to things in the sense of what, like an example, what was I in the past? Where did I live in the past?
Mm-hmm.
What will I be in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Etc. Like that. A lot of
Right.
thoughts about past and the future, the Buddha says, are thoughts that are not worthy of attention.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thoughts about the past and thoughts about the future are hindrances, and they also are parts of the restlessness, etc., like that. But he's just merely talking about that what is worth paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying thoughts of the past, thoughts of the future, etc., like that, are not worth paying attention to.
Mm-hmm.
And who am I now is also kind of not worth paying much attention to, not
Hmm.
without the right tools.
Oh, who am I now? That's an
Yeah,
interesting one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Who am I now is requires a depth of paticca samuppada in
Mm-hmm.
order to understand that who am I now? I'm a process. I am not an event. I'm not a being. I'm,
Oh.
I'm not a pond. I'm a river. In that regard.
Oh. Interesting. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So we're looking at things that are not worthy of attention, but what is worthy of attention?
Mm.
Those things that are worthy of attention are the things that will lead to peace, happiness,
Mm-hmm.
reduction and elimination of suffering.
Mm.
And those things that are not worthy paying attention to do
Mm-hmm.
not eliminate suffering. In fact, they create more of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then the next thing that the Buddha says is what is worthy paying attention to.
Mm.
And this is where this is where the hammer drops.
Mm.
This is suffering. This is the cause of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
This is what it's like to be free from suffering, and this is the path
Mm-hmm.
that is free from suffering. In other words, the Four Noble Truths are
Mm.
what's worth paying attention to.
Mm.
All right. Now, what we can go back and incorporate something together with Sutta number 24 and Sutta number 48. And
Mm-hmm.
that is that step between virtue and purification of the mind.
Mm.
Or let us say the cleansing of the mind. The cleansing of the mind means that at this particular point in time, and it may last 1 minute, it may last 30 minutes, it may last an hour, but for this small period of time, we are free from the hindrances.
Mm. Right. Right.
Okay? Now, when the mind is free from hindrances, that's step 2 on the path number 4 of the Sutta number 48.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that means, in fact, the Buddha goes very specifically and talks about aspects of that that look, um, let us say it fulfills all the requirements of the first jhana.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now, in another sutta, number 36, he says that the first jhana is, in fact, the path
Oh.
to enlightenment. That
Mm-hmm.
is the first jhana. It's
Mm-hmm.
not the deeper concentrations.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the word samadhi doesn't even appear until he's referring to the second jhana. But the
Oh.
first jhana has these characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
One is that the mind is secluded from the hindrances
Mm-hmm.
and finds that pleasurable.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasurably secluded from the hindrances.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one is that the mind is now fit for work because it has the quality of being able to apply the mind
Mm-hmm.
and keep the mind focused or sustained on
Mm-hmm.
the topic.
Mm-hmm.
What is the topic now? The topic that we're going to apply the mind to and abstain and sustain the mind on
Mm-hmm.
is the Four Noble Truths.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And by doing so, in the second sutta number 2, the Sabha Asava Sutta, there's
Mm-hmm.
actually a promise made
Mm.
or a future indicated. If you do, in fact, spend your time
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the Four Noble Truths,
Mm-hmm.
then 3 fetters will be abandoned.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are the 3 fetters that are abandoned? Personality view,
Mm-hmm.
doubt,
Mm-hmm.
adherence to rites, rules, and rituals, and knowledge and vision of what is and what is not the path.
Mm.
So the very thing, and that this state, then, when the student has knowledge and vision of what is and is not the path, all doubt is eradicated, and what we also recognize as not part of the path is our attachments to rites, rules, rituals, doing it the
Mhm.
right way, doing it the way that we were told.
Mhm.
In fact, the sum total of our entire society.
Mhm.
Well, you know that society looks at it in two ways. One is we can have anarchy, we can have no rule of law, we can have
Mhm.
a complete barbarian, all of the words for that. And
Mhm.
then you can have organized society. You can
Mhm.
have the rule of law. You can
Mhm.
have this, that, and the other thing. Now, both of those, one would be called wrong view.
Mhm.
The other one would be right view,
Mhm.
but it's still a right view that is subject to clinging. It is an ordinary right view. It still has suffering in it.
Mhm.
But there is a supramundane right view, and
Mhm.
that supramundane right view is the right view about knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path,
Mhm.
which means that following the rules and following the laws of society may in fact be a very good idea, but it's not liberating.
Ah.
Doing
Mhm.
what you're told to do is not liberating.
Mhm.
Okay. In fact, here's a pure example, an excellent example of what your dad,
Mhm.
your relationship with him, and now paying attention to him. If
Mhm.
you don't pay attention to him,
Mhm.
that's going to cause a lot of suffering in the family.
Mhm.
If you paid attention to him absent-mindedly, or because you kind of know, hey, if I don't go pay attention to my dad, he's going to
Mhm.
really hit the fan.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you grudgingly give him a minute, but it's
Mhm.
not liberating for you. But
Mm.
now the approach that we've got now of looking at your dad as a Zen master, that
Mhm.
allows this to be liberating.
Oh,
You're not
Oh,
just doing
understood.
what you're told to do. It's not a rule. That he's
Oh.
actually expecting it to be a rule. Pay
Mhm.
attention to me, but you're
Mhm.
not seeing it as a rule anymore. You're seeing it as practice, Dhamma
Mm.
practice, a skill
Right.
development. And in that regard, now it is liberating.
Oh, so that's the difference between the
That's
ordinary
different.
and the.
It's the mindset that you're in. Okay.
Ah.
And the mindset now is noble because you're following the noble path. You're not just following a bunch of rules or doing
Mhm.
what your dad told you to do begrudgingly, because that doesn't liberate either one of you from suffering.
Mm.
But by
Right.
being eager, by being most willing, you're actually adding to the pleasure and joy of your dad as well as yourself.
Oh, gotcha. Mhm.
Uh, so,
Mhm.
this whole idea of following the Eightfold Noble Path, paying attention to it with a mind that's fit for work, in the
Mhm.
sense of fit for work means now that you can apply and sustain the mind on the Four Noble Truths, then you can begin to see how the mind works. You can begin to see how suffering operates. You can begin to see how to come out of the suffering. And in fact, we've been practicing your experience of being out of suffering,
Mhm.
that you know
Mhm.
what it's like, you know what the third noble truth is about. And
Mhm.
because of that, we have the ability to follow the path.
Oh, gotcha.
And we know what the path is.
Mhm.
So, what we've been talking about now is all knowledge,
Mhm.
knowledge, knowledge, knowledge.
Mhm.
And in fact, in Sutta number 24, even though we went all through five of them in the Sutta 24, in the Sutta number 48, we're
Mhm.
just getting started. We're just
Oh,
scratching the surface.
surface. Oh,
Uh
cool.
huh. The
Uh-huh.
surface, okay. And so the first one is the first knowledge is that you can clean out the mind.
Mm.
Now we also know that actually requires a winner,
Mhm.
a little bit of a winner's view. The
Mhm.
loser is I cannot clean out my mind, or the loser is I'm stuck with an unclean mind,
Mhm.
or that I am subject to the sins and I need a Jesus or a Savior that's going to save me from my sins because I can't do it myself. So this first knowledge is extremely important
Mhm.
because that's a change of attitude from I can't do it, or I'm suffering under my sins, or I'm suffering under my delusions, or whatever like that, into saying no.
Mhm.
No matter how much those kind of thoughts invade my mind, I can throw them out
Mhm. Mhm.
and come to realize that right now I'm okay.
Mm. Right.
Right now, this present moment is okay.
Mhm.
Once we begin to do that, now we begin to practice that so that we can get into this state of first jhana,
Mhm.
which means that now the mind is fit for paying attention.
Mhm.
So that we now take on what's worthy of attention, and what's worthy of attention is the Four Noble Truths.
Mhm.
And when we come to understand the Four Noble Truths,
Mhm.
especially the process of paticca samuppada, and
Mm.
so a lot of our time is going to be spent in this third topic.
Mhm.
And that third topic is it's actually only a one-liner in the sutta, but it points to the entire teachings of the Buddha, that the Buddha's teachings are different than the other teachers' teachings
Mm.
because the teaching of the Buddha is actually liberating,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that the other teachers' teachings are teachings about heavens, hells, ghosts, getting things from others like salvation,
Mhm.
sucking up to some god so that the god will give you
Mhm.
what you want, etc.,
Uh-huh.
like this. Okay, but
Uh-huh.
the Buddha's method is not that. It's not sucking up to something that's more powerful than you. Rather, it's giving you the skills that you need to be
Mhm.
powerful enough to fix
Mhm.
your own mind.
Mhm.
So that's that third step is to recognize that this path of the Buddha is liberating, and
Mm.
that is the Four Noble Truths.
Mhm.
This is also the point, going back to Sutta number 24, is
Mhm.
that point where it says purification of view.
Mhm.
Because first jhana itself is purification of the mind, making the mind fit for work. Now
Mhm.
that we're putting the mind to work, we're going to start purifying our view. And
Mhm.
that first view that needs to be purified is, who am I?
Mm.
I
Okay.
am a process. I am not a soul. I am not a self.
Mhm.
And that's where the idea is that if I was a soul,
Mhm.
then that soul is subject to a God
Mhm.
or the law of karma.
Mhm.
That's the whole idea of having a soul, is so that
Right.
after you're dead, God can kick you around like a football. But if there is no self, if there is no soul, then that's freedom itself, including being free from gods.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay,
Gotcha.
you're no longer because, and not only that, but because you're not a self. You see, the atheist idea is that I'm a me, but my
Mhm.
me is going to die when the body dies.
Mhm.
Therefore, it has to do with who is in control of the body.
Mhm.
All right. Well, the police sometimes are in control of this body.
Right.
All right. And
Oh.
Mama is sometimes in control of this body.
Oh. Didn't think
Sometimes
about it. Yeah.
sickness is in control of the body. That we're not always in control of the body.
Mhm.
But we also recognize, oh, wait a minute, I am not the body.
Oh.
I'm not the body.
Mhm.
Because I'm
Mhm.
not the body, that means that whatever is controlling the body still does not control me.
Oh.
That's
Mhm.
where we start losing our grip on adherence to rites, rules, and rituals because we recognize that the rites, rules, and rituals are not liberating.
Oh.
Rites, rules, and rituals are not liberating.
Mhm.
All right, so this threefold knowledge of who am I is
Mhm.
in referenced in the sutta number 2 as personality view.
Mhm.
In sutta number 24 is listed as purification of view
Mhm.
about who I am. In
Mhm.
sutta number 24, it's just the knowledge of the teachings of the Buddha is
Mhm.
how it's referenced. But we know for sure what the teachings of the Buddha are because
Mhm.
he says, without a doubt, that both before and now I teach only one thing,
Mhm.
and that is dukkha, dukkha nirodha, suffering and no
Mhm.
suffering. That's the whole show of the teaching of the Buddha.
Mhm.
Once we come to that, and once we've got that solid,
Mhm.
we recognize that all my task is to start keep looking out for suffering, to start
Mm.
avoiding, to start eliminating it.
Mhm.
Now, one of the things that we do when we're operating instinctually is that we want to protect the self.
Mm.
Now that we've come to this state, we recognize there is no self that needs to be protected, and the problem is that it's not protecting from other people or the problems of life. The issue is freedom of suffering,
Mhm.
which means now my attitude is going to change. The
Mhm.
attitude was before of protecting the self. Now the attitude is the elimination of suffering.
Oh. Is that the super mundane like right view, like truly like to protect from
We're getting right
alienation
into it
suffering?
exactly. All right. And
Mhm.
so one of the qualities of the super mundane mind is he
Mhm.
wants to know what he's doing wrong.
Mm.
He wants to know the mistakes he's made.
Mhm.
And the way that the Buddha talks about it in the sutta is that if a monk is breaking a rule of the Vinaya, he
Mhm.
needs to go to a senior monk, someone he trusts, to
Mhm.
do a confession.
Mhm.
And in fact, the patimokkha for the ceremony that the monks have really is more about confession than anything else. By the time they do the full ceremony,
Mhm.
everyone has already been purified
Mhm.
because of a small ceremony that's done in private. So if
Mm.
you go to the patimokkha area where the monks are getting ready to do that, you'll find tiny little clusters of twos and threes.
Oh.
And sometimes you'll see one monk who is sitting there, an elderly monk, and you'll have another monk who's doing his ceremony now, and
Oh.
then he'll have a line of students behind him so that each one of us will go
Mhm.
and make ourselves pure so that
Oh.
we can go into the patimokkha ceremony. And so the purity is expected to be there. Now,
Mhm.
this is kind of like a confessional for the Christians, but it's different.
Oh. Mhm.
What makes it different is that the confessional in the Catholic Church
Mhm.
is designed to make profit for the church. You
Oh.
go say a few Hail Marys, you put something in the poor box,
And then you're good,
and
right?
and then you're good to go. But you need to come back to the confessional
Uh-huh.
because you didn't quit the sin. You just you got a temporary stay of execution is all, and now we're going back out and robbing banks and hating moms and doing all kinds of stuff. And then we come back to the confessional and we confess our sins again, and we leave a few out from time to time. That's not the same as with the Buddhist monk. With the Buddhist monk, we do the confessing in the sense that what I did was suffering, and I want to be
Oh.
free from suffering.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm going to make a public confession of that with
Mhm.
the intention of stopping it.
Mm. Got it. Mhm.
So that's a really important point because very few people have that capability of willing to recognize what we've done wrong.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, in fact, when I tell students about this, normally what you would think of is that there is remorse built into this. And for some students, there is remorse.
Mm.
In other words, I did that and I really am sorry about it. I don't like that I have done that.
Mhm.
All right.
Mhm.
But then there's more.
Mhm.
But that's an important point. That in fact is the point where one really does become the Sotapan in the sense of
Mhm.
he's tipped the balance.
Mhm.
Each one of these knowledges, the first knowledge is that he can clean his mind. The second knowledge is that he can keep his mind clean for a certain period of time and make it fit for work. The next one is the purification by knowledge of what is the path and what is the actual teaching of the Buddha, and we then change our focus from self-protection into elimination of suffering. That's the fourth knowledge. The fourth knowledge is to be ready, willing, and able to see what we've done wrong every time and to be willing to make an apology for it. And if there's any retribution or reconciliation or rehabilitation that needs to be done, we're willing to go through that. Even if it's a jail sentence. We're willing to take the punishment. So that's the fourth step, and that's when the real fruit of Sotapan begins to take form. Because now we're really on guard for the elimination of suffering. All right, and so now that's step 4. Step 5, 6, and 7 have to do with character and strength. And when I'm talking about character and strength, we're talking about the same thing, but one's at one level and the other one is much deeper. Character is something that you can experience down to a certain level, but real strength is even deeper than that. So the first thing that comes is character. And the question is, do you have the character of one who has right, noble, supramundane view? Okay. One of the characteristics then, or the character of one who has right, noble view is that his main contact or his main emphasis upon the world is the Dhamma. And the example of that would be that that a monk is in the temple and he's got temple duties, like sweeping the floor or perhaps mopping the kitchen or washing dishes. That's probably not going to happen in many of the temples in Thailand, but in the Mahayana it could be possible. But in any case, whatever the duties of the monk are, they're not going to be a lot. Most temples have only the duties that need to be done. An example of that was at Wat Suan Mok. I remember that they had work detail. And everybody was expected to heave to on work detail. And we had a work detail on a regular basis, and everybody was expected to do it. Except that it was only on Saturday afternoon.
Only one afternoon?
On one afternoon a week. And the rest of the time, no construction detail or no organized activity. Other than that, everybody was on his own, but there is still little jobs to be done like sweeping and things like that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because those duties that we just talked about is not the reason for the monk to be in the temple. His reason to be in the temple is to devote himself to the Dhamma. So even while he is sweeping, he is still thinking about the Dhamma. That's one who has the character of one who has right view, is one who is intently curious about and working with the Dhamma even while he's doing other tasks. With you, with code, you can begin to see Dhamma right in the code. All right, so this is what we're looking for. The next one then is, do you have the character to really go into the Dhamma? And the example of this one is the mother cow has just given birth to a calf. And her major job in her whole life is to look after that calf. And she's going to do that. She's going to protect that calf. But she also has to eat. So while she's grazing, but she's got one eye on that calf. This is the character of one who has right view, is we're going to keep an eye on the Dhamma. We're going to keep an eye on suffering. And that becomes our whole life. We become dedicated to the Dhamma. We're no longer dipping our toe in the Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
We're now jumping right in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is what they mean, by the way, of the stream enterer, except that the word stream is not a good word. It's much more like a flood or a deluge or a river.
I think you described it, I think, at one point like, early on as like getting slapped in the face with like a fridge or something like that.
Slapped in the face with a what?
With like a refrigerator like coming down the river and just like slapping you.
Yes. Okay, so
mm-hmm.
so this is what we have, is the character of one who has right view, is one who knows what his job is.
Mm.
All right. So now we have the next one, which is kind of unusual when it changes from the character of one who has right view into the strength of one who has right view.
Mm.
And where this comes in is that no matter what the teachings of the Buddha are, we're curious, we're interested, and we want to put that into our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So we're willing to do research. We're willing to read other teachers. We're willing to find out what other people have to say about the teachings of the Buddha, and put that in with this system that I'm putting together for you that is coming out of the suttas.
Mm-hmm.
But the important point is that we become really dedicated to the Dhamma with a power or a strength. And that strength is also the reference to the lion.
Mm-hmm.
That by this stage we have fully come out of victim's position, and we do not entertain victim's position anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's being a victim is suffering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and in a way, you can say that a lion is capable of doing what he's told to do and still maintain being a lion. He does not have to become a victim. All right, and there's a lot of different examples. One of them would be cooperating with the police. That you can cooperate with the police without becoming subservient to them or suck up to them.
Oh, okay.
But you can go along with them because you're at the same level. You're a human being. He's a human being. We can deal with it like that. So that takes a bit of strength. Okay. Now the last one actually will refer back to the fourth one. The last one, number 7, is: do you have the strength of one who has right view? The strength of one who has right view is that it becomes delightful.
Delightful to practice the Dhamma.
Delightful, exactly. We are so deep into the Dhamma that it's our play pool, it's our swimming hole. It's delightful to be in the Dhamma. Okay. Completely immersed in the Dhamma would be a way of saying it, and it brings great joy because we've got that strength and we've got the understanding completely of the teachings of the Buddha, and we know it, and we know it beyond doubt. We've got it.
Gotcha.
All right, we've done everything that could be possibly done, and now we're enjoying the fruit. The fruit of the path is to be enjoyed, and that's where the delight, a delight Dhamma comes in. Now, I kind of knew that right from the beginning about the name Dhammarato, because I was told that, what does it mean? But now I fully know what it means, because it really is delight in the Dhamma. When you have that, when you have the Dhamma, it becomes delightful, and you become happy almost all the time. You don't get serious much, and when you do get serious, you say, "Hey, I don't like being serious. Let's be joyful instead." Okay, so that's actually part of the path. The full sotapan, the full detail of the path, is not just that knowledge and vision of what is and what is not the path. It's a deep knowledge of what is and what is not the path. Because it goes down to the level of strength. This is where one becomes a noble warrior. of the
Mm-hmm.
Dhamma, a Dhamma warrior,
Mm-hmm.
except that there's no war. But
Ah,
it has the quality of the strength.
I see. So it
It
seems like
almost
Mhm.
gives a swagger.
A swagger. I see. I see. So I guess like my response to like I guess like the model that we're laying out here is, yeah, it seems like there are like many different like I guess like I think what you've charted is like the development, right, as we go along the path. Um,
Hmm.
it's interesting, yeah, because like I think my current understanding, like at least my own like I guess like bare like or like rather like simplistic model is it seems to be the case for me is that, for example, course of an entire day, there are many moments where you can choose. And it seems to me that as much as you possibly can at every moment, just choose the Dhamma. At least like to me, like what it looks like now is there are many moments, just if you can choose, you should just choose the Dhamma when you can. I think
Exactly.
that's, okay.
But at this level of Sotapan that has the full fruit of Sotapan, this seventh knowledge that
Hmm.
makes the Dhamma delightful,
Hmm.
in that regard, always that choice that you were just talking about is a very easy choice to make.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, that's what it means. Okay.
Yeah, it's a very why? For one thing, you've got the strength and you've
Mm-hmm.
got the knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you could go so far as to say this strength that we're talking about is
Mm-hmm.
actually a kind of knowledge.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, all of this stuff starts to come together under the rubric of the second noble truth.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we're really looking at, all of this work that we've been done, all of these seven
Mm-hmm.
stages of from the very beginner, the first
Mm-hmm.
knowledge of can I clean out my mind or not,
Mm-hmm.
all the way up to fully immersed in the Dhamma,
Mm-hmm.
these things together are all lumped under the one classification called ignorance or knowledge.
Oh, got it.
The
Right, knowledge
whole
and
path of the
ignorance.
Sotapan is all about knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And these also are the first three fetters. The first three
Oh,
fetters are
got
personality view, doubt,
it. Mm-hmm.
and knowledge of what is and is not the path of the Buddha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you can see that when you get those three things, that's what brings you up to the midpoint of Sotapan. That's the path of Sotapan. The fruit of
Mm-hmm.
Sotapan then is once we've really got it, we become dedicated with these
Mm-hmm.
characters, this character
Mm-hmm.
and the strength. The
Mm-hmm.
character and the strength is then what gives the
Mm-hmm.
fruit of the
Mm-hmm.
Sotapan. All
Mm-hmm.
right. But these are
Gotcha.
only the first three fetters of
Mm-hmm.
10.
There's high. Uh-huh.
But
Of
these are
of
the fetters that are able to be destroyed through proper knowledge.
there's more, there's higher fetters, yes.
Ah, yes. In fact, we could say, looking at the second noble truth of Loha Moha Dosa, this
Mm.
third one, ignorance, that's the only one we've been working on. The first two
Mm-hmm.
of greed and ill will,
Mm-hmm.
we've known all along, or at least for quite a while, that this is suffering. It needs to be eliminated. But
Mm-hmm.
down at the basic place of the fetter, these things have not really been dealt with.
Ah.
We've just started to deal with them. But it's with
Ah.
the knowledge of the Eightfold Noble Path that we can really deal with them. So
Mm-hmm.
the second noble truth of greed, ill will, and delusion, the first one we work with for quite a while is the delusional part until we come out of our delusions. We start having super mundane right view. We start
Ah.
becoming dedicated to super mundane right view,
Mm-hmm.
etc. Now, guess what? We have the skills that we need to eradicate fetter number 4 and 5.
Oh. Oh, I see. I
Now,
see.
the Christians know all about fetter number 4 and 5,
Mm-hmm.
but they know all about it in the sense of that it's sin,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have the tools to come out. They don't have the knowledge.
I see.
That's why we want Jesus to do it for us.
Uh-huh.
But
Oh.
with the Sotapan is now the one who has the power,
Mm-hmm.
the strength, the character,
Mm-hmm.
and the knowledge to eradicate those two fetters of
Oh.
greed and ill will.
Mm-hmm.
All
Mm-hmm.
right. And we almost always can see that ill will is almost always in the past.
Yes, because it's like, oh, I had a grudge against this person, or you kind of, it's also kind of like the fundamental attribution error, right? It's like, oh, this person's always like this. And, they did it like this, so they've got it. They have to always be like this or this that, right? Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, um,
Mm-hmm.
yes, what that means is that it's easy to forgive
Mm-hmm.
other people
Okay, have a good night. Yeah. Bye. Yeah. 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 I just had to.
precisely because the only thing that you've got that they don't have is the knowledge about how to get out of the trap, but you're still in it just like they are.
Oh, okay. I see.
And so we begin to have a lot of compassion for other people. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, right noble view, the
Mm-hmm.
higher view, really is compassion.
Mm-hmm.
The higher the right noble view is, the more
Mm-hmm.
compassionate it is.
Oh, okay. I see.
And so this is how we begin to deal with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, with that compassion, it really doesn't matter what they've done to you. You can forgive them easily. We don't
Oh.
hold grudges with other people.
So if I understand, like part of it is understanding is kind of seeing that well other people's minds like work like mine too, like the basic underpinning, right? The dynamic of like the dukkha and nirodha. It's the same. It's universal. And then
Hmm.
from that you'll be able to understand why people, or like you'll have the compassion will arise for what other people do, and gradually that
Uh-huh.
will eliminate the higher fetters. So where does generosity tie in all of this? I think.
Oh, that's a power.
Mm-hmm. I see. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Generosity as a power
Mm-hmm.
gives you the sense of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A year ago, you would have never considered giving $20 bill
Oh
to a
yeah.
person on the street.
Yeah.
But now you feel wealthy enough to do that.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And your salary has not changed that much.
Uh-huh.
And so you're developing a power. These are the idia
Mm-hmm.
that we start developing right from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me talk about this for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Idiopada,
Mm-hmm.
or the in Hindi, they use the word siddhi. But
Mm-hmm.
idia and the siddhi are exactly the same word,
Mm-hmm.
and that in the religions is used as magical power.
Mm-hmm.
The power of being able to dive in and swim in the earth, or to walk on water,
Mm-hmm.
or other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Clairvoyance, clairaudience, these are
Mm-hmm.
magical powers,
Mm-hmm.
and they're ridiculous
Yeah.
because the cities that the Buddha is talking about
Mm-hmm.
um, is real power that an individual can have.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have those powers, that's what makes you more lion like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. What are these powers? The very powers that I've talked about: success, satisfaction,
Mm-hmm.
safety,
Mm-hmm.
security, the feeling of wealth,
Mm-hmm.
the feeling of the strength to take care of the situation. All of this kind of stuff is the real power that we
Mm-hmm.
have. The power of being a lion, which
Mm-hmm.
is goes exactly back to this quality of strength
Mm-hmm.
that I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the strength to always put your mind into Dhamma?
Oh, okay. That's what we're talking about.
Okay, so that's where generosity fits in. It's a parami uh, that comes from, if it's natural, it comes from the feeling of wealth. But by practicing generosity, it gives the feeling of wealth, or it
Gotcha.
gives the attitude.
Mm-hmm.
It's a new kind of noble, right attitude.
Mm-hmm.
This is that you can handle anything,
Mm-hmm.
that there's nothing to be afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
That $20, giving that $20 away is not going to be harmful to you at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, why? Because Willie is a lion. Willie is a noble. Willie is generous. He has a feeling of wealthiness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, and that comes also with the quality of security.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, when you have those qualities, when you have the quality of the feeling of success, the feeling of power, the
Mm-hmm.
feeling of strength, the feeling of um, being wealthy,
Mm-hmm.
that all feeds in with that seventh quality of the strength of one who has right view, gives one delight in the Dhamma.
Mm-hmm.
We become delighted with life because we're
Mm-hmm.
no longer afraid of it. We've got
Mm-hmm.
all the tools that we need now to
Mm-hmm.
do what needs to be done. And we know what that task is. And that task is to eliminate
Suffering.
um, suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And the two main suffering things that we're going to work on first is greed and ill will.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, ill will is almost always out of the past.
Mm.
Greed is almost always in the future.
Oh. Oh, that's
It's
actually
something we
true
want.
though. Right? Because
Pardon?
greed is kind of like, how can I get like more? What do I need to do? How do I put my chess pieces, arrange my duckies? Ill will is, this person wronged me in the past, or this was what happened before, so now I don't like it, or that. Oh. Oh, that's really neat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you can see staying in the present moment with proper knowledge
Mm,
helps to eliminate these two major causes of suffering.
mm-hmm,
We can also see that greed is oh, it's a form of clinging.
you're clinging to what hasn't
Yes,
happened yet, or
to
like,
what hasn't happened. I want it. I want it. I want it. I'm clinging to it. I'm going to make it happen, etc., like that.
oh,
Oh, hedge fund managers, good
understood.
example.
Mm, right, right.
All right. So, um, but what we can do now is look a little bit deeper under the greed,
Mm-hmm,
back at the level of Paticca Samuppada. We know that if I like it, and
mm-hmm.
I like it ignorantly, well, now we're going to bring wisdom in. I'm going to like things, but I'm going to like them wisely, not ignorantly.
So I like but do not want.
I
Mm-hmm.
like it, but I don't want it. That's
Oh,
what wisdom. But if we are not wise, then I like it becomes I want it. And
gotcha.
I want it becomes I gotta have it. And when I
That.
gotta have it, that's when it's the level of greed. That's when it owns you.
Oh, interesting. So I'm curious because, like, so before we talk about coding in the Dhamma, right? I think one smaller scale example is, you see a problem and you're like, interesting, but then if you're not careful, you're like, I have to solve it. I have to solve it, or why isn't this working? Or I gotta solve it. I guess that's part of it on like a smaller scale, right? Like, I mean, I guess this is basically the thing on like a smaller scale, right? When you get so like stuck in a rut, or I gotta do this, I gotta. Oh, okay,
But
interesting.
you also know, probably from experience now, that if
Mm-hmm.
you've got a particular piece of code
Mm,
that is not working for you, the right thing to do is to go take a coffee break,
right, it's to
to
stop.
get
It's
away
just.
from it, get it out
Yeah.
of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you bring it into the mind again, it may not go in the same way.
Correct. Yeah.
The other day, I was seeing a video of a dog who had a stick, and he was trying to bring it into the house, but the stick was longer than the door, and he had the
He.
stick in the middle of his mouth.
Mhm.
And because he had it in the middle of his mouth, he couldn't get in.
That's such a great
But he
analogy.
set the stick down.
And he's gonna pick it up in a
And he
different
turned
way.
it around, and the next time he picked it up by one of his by the stick that was closer to the end, so that it
Oh
was
my
like
God, that's
2/3. And with that, when he walked in, the stick only hit one side of the door and not
uh-huh.
the other, and he just walked right in.
That's a genius. That's like a genius analogy. Oh my.
That is so I mean, that's exactly so. When you set it, when you're trying to work on a problem and you can't solve it, the thing to do is to set it down. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you pick it up, don't pick it up the way that you set it down. Pick it up in a new way, and
Mm-hmm.
now you can probably just go right through.
That's genius. Oh my God, that's like a genius. Okay, I'd steal like that one. That's really good. That was really
Yeah.
good. Uh-huh.
So problem solving, we need to set those things down.
Mm-hmm.
Take a break. Get away from them.
Mm-hmm.
Clear the mind out. Take a deep breath.
So now I'm curious, like, what are the so after ill will and greed, right? Like, what comes next? Like, what are the even higher fetters? Oh, now I'm really curious.
All right.
Uh-huh.
I will remind me next time you call, and we'll talk about them.
Yes.
But I have already covered those
Mm-hmm.
with Ferdinand. So if you want to see them on the internet,
Mm-hmm.
and I actually took 5 lectures with him
Wow,
to cover the 5 higher fetters
those are
because
some
they
really
go
deep fetters.
really, really deep. But if you can come to the place where you are absolutely dedicated to the Dhamma, you
Mm,
have the strength of the Dhamma,
mm-hmm.
that you have the fruit of the Dhamma and the joy of the Dhamma, then the eradication of these things that are associated with feelings can
Mm,
be dealt with.
mm-hmm.
And when you've got those dealt with, you've got quite a lot of the path.
Down.
This goes from in fact, it goes Sotapan is
Mm,
based in knowledge. The Sotagami is one who has partially eradicated the 2 next fetters, number 4 and 5, greed and ill will.
mm-hmm.
And then the Anagami is one who is completely free of them.
Oh.
And then then the Arahat is the one who has eliminated the next 5.
Oh,
Now,
gotcha.
these next 5 are something that we deal with on a regular basis anyway, but what we need is the real tools in order to eradicate them. But
Mm-hmm.
we can mollify them, reduce them, etc., all along the way. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, even in Christianity, they have solutions for some of this. Um, an example would be mana or conceit. Now,
Oh.
mana or conceit
Mm-hmm.
is our, let us say, oftentimes willingness to compare ourselves with others.
Oh, okay. Right.
Politicians compare themselves to other politicians a lot. Hedge fund managers, they compare themselves with other hedge fund managers a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Bankers compare each other to themselves to other bankers a lot.
Oh, yeah. You told me that story about the monk who went up to the Buddha and said, "Yep, I've stopped comparing myself with everybody else." And the Buddha was like, "Yep, this guy is like a lion.
Yeah,
Or
that's
something
a
like this."
lion's roar, exactly. But
Oh.
even the Christians know about pride because you see, if you have mana,
Mm-hmm.
if you have conceit, and
Mm-hmm.
you're comparing yourself to other people, you're either going to win or lose.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
And if you lose, then that's jealousy, envy, wanting things
Mm-hmm.
based in greed.
Mm-hmm.
If we compare ourselves and we win, which by the way begins to happen more and more as you become a really good Dhamma dude,
Mm-hmm.
you begin to look at yourself as a Dhamma dude and you start to compare yourself with others who um, you put in the class of Dhamma dudes so you can compare yourself with them and you'll
Oh.
win every time
Oh.
to the point that you get even tired of doing it. That's when we begin to stop comparing ourselves to others, is when there's no reason to do so.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha.
All right, so that's just one of them, one of the top
Mm-hmm.
5, and they're we normally in the West think of them as higher, to
Mm-hmm.
where in the suttas they're referred to as rupa and arupa, which
Mm-hmm.
means physical and not physical, or completely mental.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In other words, ignorance can be seen directly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you voted Republican? Oh, I know what you are. There's ignorance right there. Okay. Easily to be seen. All right. Oh, you're in the car dealership shopping for a new car. Oh, that's greed.
Yes,
I can see it.
ignorance.
Oh, you're yelling at your wife and you're about to hit her. Oh, I know what that is. Yes. Okay. So these are rupa. That means they can be seen.
Oh.
Greed, ill will, and delusion can be seen from the outside,
Mm-hmm.
but conceit, restlessness,
Mm-hmm.
worry, remorse,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Uh-huh.
clinging to existence, etc. These what we call high five
Mm-hmm.
are actually just hmm, they're ordinary because we can experience the suffering that they bring, and
Mm-hmm.
that there are some things that we can do about it, regardless of where we are on the path. Even those who haven't started the path, they still recognize that pride. So, with, for instance, Christianity, their solution to pride
Mm-hmm.
is humility.
Oh.
And so they practice humility as an example of what to do to eliminate pride. The Buddha does not use humility, even though a lot of Buddhist religion and a lot of Westerners, they've grabbed that Christian concept of
Mm-hmm.
humility and think that Buddhas are
Mm-hmm.
all humble and all. They're not. They're lions. They're not. No humble there.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
this idea of pride with Christianity is
Mm-hmm.
kind of medicated with humility,
Mm-hmm.
to where within Buddhism, correct noble Dhamma,
Mm-hmm.
we eliminate pride by eliminating comparisons.
Gotcha.
All
Oh, so
right?
that's the root, right? It's not the humility because if you're saying you're practicing humility. The comparison is still there. You're just saying that like, oh, yeah, I'm not that good. You know,
Mhm.
oh, gotcha.
Okay. So let's talk about this later. And
Mhm,
we're going to
mhm,
finish now with
mhm,
these five lower fetters,
mhm,
or five rupa
mhm,
fetters, or five physical fetters. And you can see that, oh, wait a minute, these five lower fetters are nothing but the second noble truth. That's all
mhm.
they are.
Right, they cause suffering. Right.
Right,
Mhm,
it causes suffering.
right.
Exactly. The cause
Mhm,
of suffering is greed, ill will, and delusion. And we spent 7 steps on the elimination of
mhm,
the delusion, and
mhm.
now we've become knowledgeable about how the mind works.
Oh.
Therefore, we now have the tools to eliminate greed and ill will.
Mhm,
We
mhm.
have the tools to do that, where a lot of other teachings, they don't have the tools. They don't have, you are
So.
not able to develop the skills
Mhm,
to deal with greed and ill will.
mhm. Oh, okay. I got it now. So, yeah, so I guess like to sum up, right? What I should be doing, for the next week. So the first thing is, to pay increased attention to past and future, and just to cut the past and future out. And I guess like the next thing is, so I should pay closer attention in particular to ill will and greed. I think that's definitely something that's not so emphasized. So to me, is it just that I see like whenever I see an opportunity, just practice the Dhamma, just do it, just keep practicing the Dhamma, and I think naturally, if I look for more opportunities like against like I guess like ill will and greed, just choose the Dhamma if I see it, and I think eventually they will unravel. Uh, they will unravel to the Dhamma. I see.
Yes, you can call it unraveling, but another
Mhm,
way to talk about it is to say that as you change your perspective
mhm,
with right noble view,
mhm,
these things will come into focus,
mhm,
and or instead of having an unraveled,
mhm,
you and
mhm,
I'm thinking when you use that word unraveled, I'm thinking about
mhm.
fishing line, of trying to unravel fishing line. That the unraveling
Mhm,
cannot be done physically
mm,
unless you can do the unraveling
mhm.
mentally. You
Mentally.
have to see that, oh, I've got to push that one and pull it this way to get it out of the knot.
Okay, so I think I should keep in mind like that the right view really is elimination of suffering. I think if I keep that in mind, everything else will follow, right? If
It
I look
will.
for elimination of suffering. Hmm. Okay,
Excellent.
gotcha. So out of curiosity, should I read any of the suttas like in preparation for next week?
Oh, yes, excellent.
Mhm,
The sutras that we've talked about so
mhm,
far, go and read them. Sutra number 2, sutra
okay,
number um, 48,
mhm,
sutra number 24,
mhm,
sutra number 117.
mhm.
Those are the sutras that we've covered today.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so
All
yeah,
right.
so I should pay attention to elimination of suffering. That's like the one thing I need to pay attention to. Okay, this week. Okay, got
Right.
it. Mhm,
Now, as
mhm,
far as the high five go, the Arupa Fetters, I'm not going to give you an assignment for reading those because they're kind of obscure.
mhm,
There's only just list of them
mhm,
that it takes a little bit of delving into, and so I'm not going to give you
mhm,
where they are, but I
mhm,
will tell you where they are,
mhm,
and that is that they're in the Samyutta Nikaya and
mhm,
also in the Abhidhamma,
mhm,
books that I don't normally use.
mhm. So those are the higher feathers. Got it. But
Yeah.
we let's get let's and like deal with the lower five first. I think there's a
Yes.
lot of
If you
material
can
there.
get the right, if you can get the lower five
Mhm,
out of the way,
mhm,
then it will be easy
mhm. Okay.
to deal with the higher fetters
Mhm,
one by one as they occur.
mhm,
But you've already developed so much skill
mhm,
in dealing with the five lower fetters
mhm.
that it will no longer be a subject of struggle. It's
Gotcha.
not. This is joyful.
Mhm,
This is this is like
mhm.
actually it's very much like digging up a buried treasure and opening it up and checking out to see what's in there. That's much more like what it is.
And it gets better and better as you go
It
through it.
does. Right. It's good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end.
Okay, got it. Good, better, and best, huh?
Well, yes, Sears and Roebuck Dama.
Okay, got it, got it. I think I've got plenty to read and work with for the next week. Okay, cool.
All
Next,
right.
yeah, next week I'll actually be in the same time zone as you are because I actually be going to Hong Kong next weekend, and I'm on like a 2 week, like two and a
You're
half.
going to Hong Kong. You're
Yeah,
not in the same dome. They're, I think, at least 2 hours ahead of us.
better than 12 though. Better than like
Yes.
12 or 13.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Oh, all right. Well, tell me about Hong Kong next time.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Bye bye, Willie.
Yeah. Bye
Have
bye.
fun. Have fun with your Zen master. You're the
Oh,
only student I've got that's got a live-in Zen master.
oh my God. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Yeah.